Very excited to host UTMB's own Dr. Alex, our guest lecturer today. Here to introduce Dr. Alex Vo is my cohort, Matthew LaCour. He's a first-year medical student and he serves as the vice president of the AMA student chapter here.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I would like to thank all you guys for joining us on this lovely evening. Dr. Alexander Vo is currently Vice President for Telemedicine and Health Services Technology at UTMB, where he oversees development of new telemedicine initiatives for his clinical and academical enterprises. In addition, Dr. Vo is responsible for establishing a health and innovation division at UTMB that will explore and develop new health-related technologies to meet the business and clinical needs for UTMB and the healthcare profession. This is very essential in a healthcare profession that's rapidly changing. Prior to his current role, Dr. Vo served as a senior executive position as Vice President of electronically mediated services at Colorado Access, a health insurance plan in Colorado, where he was subsequently promoted to Chief Executive Officer of 3 of its subsidiary companies. And as CEO, he led their development, launch, and growth. In addition, he was an executive director for Center for Telehealth Research and Policy at UTMB. This is recognized vastly as one of the largest operational telemedicine programs in the country, and he held a faculty appointment as an associate professor in preventive medicine and community health, and served as a consult and contract officer representative for the U.S. Army Medicine Research and Material Command's Telemedicine and Advanced Technology Research Center. Before his initial appointment here at UTMB, Dr. Vo was Science Director for the Henry Jackson Foundation, a comprehensive neuroscience program in Bethesda, Maryland. Dr. Vo is a national expert in telemedicine, a patent holder, and a former member of Texas Health and Human Services Commission Medicaid Telehealth Advisory Committee. He's also previously served at the American Telemedicine Association's Institute Council Executive Committee, and he has co-authored book chapters and scientific manuscripts in peer-reviewed journals, as well as presenting at numerous international and national meetings. So please give a round of applause to welcome Dr. Alex Vo.
How y'all doing? Thank you for that really nice and kind introduction. I wrote it myself, so no bashfulness here. I'm just kidding. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here to share with you some new and exciting things that we're going to be doing and launching at UTMB that will really propel us alongside some of the other great universities and medical centers across the country, particularly in the East and West Coast areas. So today, I'm going to stand because I can't speak off of notes. I'm getting old, so I can't remember as much, so I need to rely on notes, so please forgive me for that. But today, I'll just give you a brief overview of some of the opportunities that lie ahead for us. Also review with you our basic philosophical and business approaches to a new way of facilitating innovation and commercialization and entrepreneurship at UTMB. As you look around the country, there is an immense interest in innovations and entrepreneurships. This is evident by the fact that there's over 120 accelerators and incubators throughout the whole country, 20 of which are really well-established accelerators devoted entirely to healthcare. And about 54 or 56 of them have some kind of health segments associated with it. So, and then also, there is an emerging concept called health tech ecosystems that are actually occurring throughout the United States. There are three major ones that have popped up, one in New York, and one, of course, in Silicon Valley, and then one in the Rocky Mountain regions. And these are essentially a co-location of accelerators, established industries, as well as startups smashed together in one location to essentially help foster additional collaborative work in innovative areas. These interests and initiatives are not lost on institutions as well. More and more academic medical centers, such as UTMB, are developing innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurial programs. There are three major drivers to this, and that is, one, the need to diversify our revenue sources down the road beyond just providing medical care. The second is the realization that there's a ton of intellectual property or IP that are occurring at the institutional level. And the third thing that's driving this is that institutions are starting to realize that they can have different type of relationships with their traditional industry partners. Rather than just licensing the IP out to somebody, we now can actually engage in co-development, joint ventures, and have more what they call an upside associated with this. So here at UTMB, we want to take advantage of some of these drivers and make a systematic approach towards innovations and commercialization. So what is our model? First, we have to actually develop a basic philosophy to guide our innovation and commercialization effort. So rather than just gravitating towards something that's new, bright, and shiny, we want to have a basic foundation of how we're going to go about doing things. So our basic goal is to build and leverage the next generation solutions that will truly impact the way we approach and provide healthcare. In doing so, we actually have three fundamental tasks. We will develop new technologies that includes digital health, life sciences, biotechs, etc. We will partner up with others who share a common goal as well as a mission with us and who are complementary to what we're doing. And we will also sponsor new innovations and projects. So with the overarching goal in mind, we will approach technologies with three fundamental focuses. I call them the 3 E's. That is, technologies that enable the provision of healthcare, technologies that empower decision-making around healthcare, and of course, technologies that embolden us to do things in a non-traditional way. So let me give you examples of what some of those things will look like. So here's an example of enablement. Some of the technologies here essentially overlap with empowerment, like analytics will help enable provision of care as well as empower decision making. So the stuff on the right-hand side are some of the things that we're going to go after for enablement. Some of this, and here's some of examples for empowerment tools, and of course, emboldenment. This is an example of a model that actually disrupts how people may sign up for healthcare. Essentially, the private exchanges. It actually allows for competition, add value to the clients, and essentially, if you look at this, is taking private exchanges and instead taking eBay, the business concept of eBay and Match.com, and smashing it together, essentially highlighting out what brokers actually do in a black box. So it's just an example, but it's very disruptive to their industry. So how are we going to go about doing all this at UTMB? From the business standpoint, UTMB stands at a very advantageous position to be the primary driver of its own innovations. We are a flagship medical center with visionary leadership. We have a ton of IPs, or intellectual property. We have partnerships we can leverage. We can serve as our own clinical validation platform for the innovations that we generate, as well as serve in that capacity for others as well, thereby creating a new relationship with industry partners. We have incredible untapped entrepreneurial spirit amongst our faculty, staff, and student. And we have a window of opportunity to do this in. We have a lot of interest from industry partners as well as potential investors who are knocking at our door to actually do some of these things with us. So like any good business plan, we have examined the gaps and have surmised that the strength and opportunities far outweigh the threats and weaknesses that face us. So we have to do this now. So how are we going to do this? UTMB is spinning off a holding company called Gulf Coast Health Innovations, or GCHI, to provide supportive and management services to help launch a series of for-profit entities to reflect the various ventures that we're going to be engaged in. These ventures will essentially range from the gamut of healthcare to include biotech, life sciences, digital health, and et cetera, and will be driven by the entrepreneurial spirit of our faculty, staff, and student body. GCHI will assist with developing investor relationships as well as facilitating strategic partnerships with other institutions and industries through both investments, collaborative work, and joint ventures. We actually have a number of these initiatives in the pipeline already. I'll give you a sample of 4. We just actually launched MBD, which is Mobile Biomarker Diagnostics. It's a joint venture between us and K-State with Dr. Brazer and Masoud Matamedi as the principal from our side to essentially leverage smartphone chip technologies for biomarker diagnostics. And that actually will serve as a platform for other collaborative IP work with K-State as well. They're very interested in doing some of these things. I think a total of about 4 to 5 patents is actually going to be reside in that company alone. And we actually have institutional investors who are ready to take a look at it. The other one is a wellness application based on our STEAM aerospace medicine program. A third is a visual analytics with Dr. Sharish Bhavani. I just butchered his name, so if you're out there, I apologize. But it's a great platform to use visual analytics to do empowerment type work. And of course, we're in the middle of negotiation right now with a company based in Atlanta to do a joint venture where they're going to raise tens of millions of dollars to actually fund this venture with us on population health management. So this model is very different than the usual startup model, as our portfolio of companies will be considered spin-offs backed by a flagship medical institution, making collaborations, investments, and joint ventureships much more appealing and attractive to external entities because we actually now have skin in the game. We show that we're committed to these things, so they're just not backing up a pure startup. So the basic structure, and I was told today that we will be registering GCHI within a week. So the basic structure is GCHI is essentially a taxable nonprofit wholly owned by UTMB with 3 board members. Chairman of the board is always going to be the president of UTMB with 2 other board members who are senior leadership of UTMB. And along with all the for-profit companies, GCHI will be the initial member along with the co-founders. And then those companies are open to essentially collaborative work, investment opportunities, and hopefully down the road, some of them exit out in a positive upside way. So here's basically a sample of a go-to-market strategy that we will construct for each spinoff. As looking at the business plan, the product cycle development, and what we're going to do with it. This is actually for a digital health platform, so it's basically a sample to show you some of the things that will help the spinoff construct and think about the life cycle as a company. So my presentations tend to be very short because I'm at the end, because I don't like going to mass and having the pastor have 30 minutes. So I try to model myself in a way that is more reflective of what my attention span can hold. So this is the end, and I'd like to open up for dialogue and discussions and any questions that you may have.
Dr. Bo, where do you see the clinical applications of the telehealth fitting into this?
Well, it certainly is a big part of the enablement focus for us. We can actually develop new ways of essentially helping provide the access of care that is a big gap in the state here. So some of the technologies that we will leverage could be developed towards facilitating more access to care. For instance, we just got approval from the Board of Regents to implement or help them implement this thing called the UT Virtual Health Network, VHN. And that was actually approved by the Board of Regents about 3 weeks ago. And it's actually a telehealth network linking all of the healthcare institutions of the UT, all 8 of them, including the medical schools, together under one telehealth umbrella. So we are set to be the prime coordinating body for that as UTMB because of our history of telemedicine. And then within that program, there are two technology platforms that we need to develop to actually make this work. One is a scheduling platform, and another one is a document sharing platform to exchange clinical notes. And those two platforms can actually be commercializable on behalf of UT as we develop them. So it's a great example of an enabling platform. Did that answer your question, Dr. Raymer? Yes.
I think I can yell loud enough. I appreciate your brevity. I think that.
You need to use a mic because we're recording.
How's that?
Thank you.
I'll just repeat myself. I appreciate your brevity because, and the lack of the questions I think I hear from this group is because it is so disruptive. I mean, it's a whole new thing. I'm trying to get my head around it, but as somebody who's interested in innovative things and a faculty member that wants to participate in something like this, how do you go past that dotted line and not get into conflict of interest, salary? How do you address those issues?
So we work with our legal department to address those. Of course, there's a couple of mechanisms right now which is in place where some of our past faculty has founded companies and left, as well as or they could choose to maintain as a faculty member, but they have a shared interest in that entity, but they can't work there full time both places. Obviously, then you actually create conflict of interest. But then there's also a mechanism in which we can actually talk about and negotiate with in terms of how that would work. It depends on the interest of the faculty and staff who actually spins these things off. One of the things in which they have done it in the past is spin off a company, hire somebody to actually run the company, and then they're a co-founder, but they're full-time faculty here, essentially. You do have to declare those conflict of interest, though.
Yeah.
Hi, Alex.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for a nice presentation. I just wanted to throw out a plug that since we're talking about commercialization and technology, that we're starting a group called the Innovations in Molecular Therapeutics and Devices within the Institute for Translational Sciences. So this is a group of inventors and device makers that meet monthly to exchange information and also to learn about how to do best practices with regards to advancing their products and commercialization. So this might be a very useful pipeline for people that are thinking about commercializing or developing new technologies to get them to the point where you'd be interested in helping them to develop a company. So keep an eye out for the IMTD or Insight work groups announcements that the ITS sends out. We have a regular seminar series and a group that meets. So please participate in these, and these will help to make a more robust pipeline for what your Gulf Coast Health Innovations will be doing.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
How do you see this working practically? Do investigators or faculty have to come to you and say, we have an idea? Do you look through all this research done at UTMB and then pick?
Well, it's a combination of both. What I've been doing since we've been getting approval at systems level for this, it hasn't been really pronounced and advertised as much because we haven't had the ability to do it in an approval way. What has been happening is I've been introduced to inventors and entrepreneurs here who are faculty, like some of the ones that I just kind of mentioned, and working with them and facilitating some ideas. So it could occur in that mechanism where I'm in the system. So look me up if you have an idea you want to talk about further. More than happy to do that. We actually are bringing on staff to actually help comb through the system to look at our various IPs to see if the faculties and inventors in those areas are also interested. So it's going to be a combination of both. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bowe. This is a very exciting path forward for UTMB. Can you tell us a little bit about how this will relate to our patient care and what will it mean for the UTMB patient now and in the future?
Well, certainly, as a clinical validation platform, UTMB as a flagship medical center, we can certainly utilize some of the inventions that come out of this to enhance patient care. So that's one direct way. Another way is as UTMB expands in terms of, its ability to be involved in other revenue generating streams, we will actually be in a better position to procure resources to enhance patient care. So that's two immediate things off the top of my head. And then we want to work with external folks as well. So we may have joint ventures with people who have really neat way of approaching patient care that we can implement here at UTMB on top of that.
When you talk about us being a clinical platform, what does that look like? Is that in the form of like clinical trials?
Yeah, well, so that's traditionally what it has been. For instance, we actually executed an LOI, which is what we'll call a letter of intent to negotiate with a company based in the UK, who were founded by two former Apple executives, who developed a wearable device to measure balance and gait. So they were interested in looking at us to do a study to actually validate their software system and their platform. So that's a clinical validation. In exchange for that, we would actually get 10% equity in their company. So that's pretty upside for UTMB, because if they take off, then, so that's kind of different types of relationships we can negotiate for. Unfortunately, that company kind of stalled a little bit, but, it's not everything will succeed in this world, but you have to find those kind of opportunities and kind of go for it. So that's an example of clinical validation platform.
Other questions? So I'm a first-year medical student, and you mentioned students earlier in your presentation. I'm just wondering how, as students, can we get involved with the idea of telemedicine or this project?
Seek me out.
Okay.
I'm in the system.
Is there anything specific that we can do as students to prepare? Or?
Well, think about some of the ways as you're learning, how to essentially be physicians. And if you think of ways in terms of how to make things more efficient, leverage technologies to deliver care, and you have your own ideas, that's where it starts. It's essentially what it is all inventions and all entrepreneurs are trying to solve some kind of problem. So if you encounter a problem you have a solution for, that's really neat. We want to hear about it.
Dr. Vo, a minute ago you were referring to your group as sort of like the skunk works that IBM used to have, where you just throw all these people into a laboratory area and they come up with innovative ideas. Would there be room for our medical students, graduate students, nursing students to participate in the ideas that they have? Would there be availability in your office or your department for them to bring things to you that they believe might facilitate or improve the quality and efficiency of healthcare?
Absolutely, sir. And I think that relates to what I just said about. I didn't catch your name, but yeah. Absolutely.
And it's hard to find you because your last name is only two letters, V and O.
Yes.
Right in the directory. You will respond to their emails.
Yes. And actually, I'm based out of the Customs House, which is 1700 Strand, which is right down the street. So we actually have space for us to facilitate some of these ideas, as well as map out some, current existing plans and stuff like that.
I want to ask one other thing, and that is, what do you believe the future is for wearable diagnostic devices? Right now, we're all familiar with Holter monitors and the like. What do you see in the future as being able to monitor diabetes, congestive heart failure, and these kinds of illnesses?
Right. I think it's going to be very passive in the future. Passive meaning that the patient will not have to do a thing. I think it will be embedded into their bodies down the road. Of course, that requires a ton of regulatory hurdles, but the future, right? And so I think it will be very passive, embedded. It could be on the skin, and it will be looking at things that we normally wouldn't think about. We were looking at more genomics, proteomics type of stuff, biomarkers, and it will automatically alert their care providers, if their parameters or thresholds are coming out of whack. And in some cases, it may even deliver the intervention itself. And so I think it's going to be the future is pretty much limitless in this.
Good afternoon, and thank you for an excellent presentation. My question would be, how would this relate to nursing practice, and is there a place for our nurses in this?
Absolutely. I mean, you guys are I think the leaders in this at UTMB with your Maker's Nurse platform, that you are already solving problems. This is not, I mean, I talk a lot about investors and commercializations, but down to the core, we are solving problems that we face on a daily basis. And it just so happens some of those solutions can be commercializable. And so you're already doing that. So I applaud it. And I just want to say one thing. This would not happen without the visionary leadership of Dr. Callender. He actually conceived of all of this. And he realized that we need to move UTMB into an area that goes beyond the traditional way of doing research, traditional way of providing healthcare, traditional way of doing business. And so he recognized we have a small window of opportunity, and then he basically enact all of this. So we do have a very significant gratitude to my boss. Because this is a grand vision that he has for how we can actually move into the 23rd century with UTMB.
Dr. Vo, one of the
Sissy, you're cut off, Sissy. I'm sorry.
One of the challenges,
I know Sissy fairly well, so I can mess with
you can
her.
tell me that. One of the challenges you face with this is your information technology platforms and your analytics. That's a pretty steep curve. What's your plan for addressing that?
Well, we do have some analytics folks here at UTMB who are developing really neat platform, and the guy who with the microphone right now is one of them. And so we want to sponsor and support what Suresh is doing. And so it's not going to be a problem for me. I think we have a lot of great ideas here from the people I've met so far. It's a matter of like getting them on the right path of commercialization and supporting those efforts that way.
Thanks very much for your support, Dr. Vo. The question I have is, there's some research that shows a lot of health information technologies and also broadly health technologies fail because they don't incorporate the end user right up front. And I was wondering if there's a systematic philosophy underlying all these technologies that we will develop to engage patients, engage the end users early and throughout the cycle.
Yes, there are some very fundamental research that has been done that shows several key things associated with engagement and continued engagement, and that eventually leads to empowerment. So we are actually gathering those kind of best practices so that we have that in the back of our head as we approach some of the technologies such as yourself and stuff like that. So we're in line with what works and what doesn't. You know, like I said, we're not going to gravitate towards what's bright and shiny and new all the time. Some of the stuff is bright and shiny and new and really fantastic, but it's going to be grounded in a basic philosophy, goal, and focus.
Other question? Dr. Vo, can you talk about some of that bright, shiny, and new without giving away?
I just named four. The rest is stuff. And Dr. Brazer's work with smartphone sensing technology. What we hope to do with that is pretty amazing. We actually have an institutional funder up in Dallas who's wanting to see this once we get it to a prototype. And essentially what it is I can't explain the science as better as he can, but essentially it's a chip platform where we actually insert it into an iPhone, do a drop of blood and it lights up essentially the biomarkers in which the patient has a certain disease or propensity for certain diseases. And of course he can grab the mic and go into much more detail than I can, but that's pretty amazing. A point of care diagnostic without sending it to a laboratory. Imagine the utility of that, not only for primary care physicians, but also for rural areas, third world countries. Game changer.
How ready are various UTMB systems like Epic EMR to start receiving this kind of data?
I do not have an answer to that question because I don't deal with Epic and I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Sorry, Todd, if you're listening. But it's a very complex system. We're actually in a, not to make light of it, we're working with a number of groups as we developed this document sharing platform for this telehealth thing. And one of the things we went about thinking about is to actually put an API, we'll call it an API application interface into Epic or something like that. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So our goal towards this document sharing platform is not to put hooks into any EMRs at all. We will never implement this program, this VHN program. So what we're going to do is essentially do a basic platform where clinical notes can be PDF and exchanged in a secure manner. That way, then you have to import it into your EMR, and so I don't have to do anything, and vice versa. That way, it actually allows us to actually get the VHN off the ground. But in terms of interfacing with data like Epic and stuff like that, I mean, it really is a heavy lift because there's a lot of proprietary source codes that you have to go through the third-party vendor on and work with them on. And a lot of those data, our instance of Epic here at UTMB is not the same instance of Epic at UT Health Sciences in Houston. It's very different. It's customizable to each group. So that presents challenges and barriers for communicating, but there's ways around it, and it takes a lot of time. So.
Thank you. And then a second question, kind of a little bit easier, maybe more fun for you to answer. Do you have any population health kind of ideas or things in the pipeline that you'd like to share?
Yes. So our fourth piece is, one of the things, I'm going to put a plug here for CMC. One of the things that the Correctional Managed Care Group have done so well for the last 20 years is population health management. They've never realized it, that's what they do. It's funny because when I first came back and spoke with Owen Murray, Dr. Murray, about it, he was describing his protocols and his program, and I said, you realize that you were, basically achieving the triple aims? And he's like, what's the triple aims? Like, that's what every state is trying to achieve for. So what we did was we sat with him and his team and outlined everything that they've done. And actually we have a provisional patent right now on the business process of doing capitated population health management. And that's why this group in Atlanta is actually interested in licensing it from us. So that's one example.
Any questions? David? Yes. No. Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
How much money will UTMB have to spend to start these companies, and how fast will UTMB expect to get a return on that investment and to make a profit?
Oh, somebody's got to ask me about money. Well, we don't have a lot of money. We do need to invest some money in order to make money. I mean, that's the attitude. You do have to spend to make. My goal is to spend as least as possible. Hence, joint ventures make a great deal of sense, particularly joint ventures where they raise the money for us. And then part of what I do a lot these days is to go out and procure interest from institutional investors to actually either help us co-develop things, so they will sponsor those things, or invest directly into the companies that we're working with. So that's and then of course traditional ways of applying for SBIRs and stuff like that or other mechanisms. Once we actually stand up Gulf Coast Health Innovations, we will be able to be very nimble in terms of spinning off stuff much more quickly than what we've done before. And then in terms of an ROI, for down the road, that depends. That depends on what type of invention it is or commercialization we're working at. Obviously, pharmaceuticals and life sciences and biotech stuff that require a lot of regulatory approval takes a longer runway versus something like a digital health platform takes a much shorter runway in terms of ROI. And if we do partner up with an investment group or strategic partnerships, those are kind of unique. And that's what I really want to go after. So strategic partners are essentially folks who can put up some money and invest into the technology, but at the same time deploy the technology into their populations as well. So we actually have a validation going on as well as a potential contract. So one of the other things that we want to look at is how do we actually commercialize it in terms of contractual arrangements to do either consulting services or actually sell the technology to some folks to use as a service. So the ROI for those things are much shorter in time frame versus some of the pharmaceuticals and life sciences things. So it really depends on what it is that we're working on in terms of ROI.
The traditional model of doing research or proving a hypothesis or developing something is industry sponsors the research,
right,
or you apply for a grant, and you get money and you do the research with that money. Did I hear you correctly that maybe now with the GCHI there is a way to actually go through GCHI, do that research, and in turn get the reward would be equity, part equity into that product? So
yep,
maybe if a company wants to test their product, we can do the research,
right,
in return for part equity?
Possibly.
And who would then fund that research? Would GCHI then fund part of that?
Part of it, yes. I mean, one of the things I've done is sponsor a small part of it, but eventually what we want to do is, like I said, get strategic partners who actually can fund that research because it actually applies to their population. So they have an upside in terms of not only co-owning a piece of that technology, but it also helps their population as well. And that's, it's a win-win for everybody.
Other questions?
So, this is really unique for UTMB. There's a lot of risk. I'm not going to lie and say, oh yeah, everything's going to work out great. There's going to be some failures. That's the nature of the business. But you have to take more risk these days in order to really move and advance forward. And that's the reality of the world. Exciting or no? Great. Well, thank you very much. Oh, Dr. Raymond, one more.
Thank you, Dr. Bowe, on giving us a taste of what's in store for the future. And I really want to plug an opportunity here for all of our staff and all of our students. You can get on the ground floor of the ideas that you have from bedside to technology transfer in best order here. So if you got a good idea, bring it forward to some of the names that you have seen today. It's a great opportunity for you. Maybe you can retire early. That would be great. I want to put a plug in today for the UTMB Mini Medical School. We're running that this spring, starting March 23rd, every Wednesday evening here in Levin Hall. We will have for the general public and for our citizens here in Galveston a mini medical school that will take them through respiratory system, immune system, nervous system, cardiovascular system, digestive system, and issue of health equity. Now, for those of you who are in the second year studying for boards, you may not want to attend this. It may not be intensive enough for you. But for the rest of you guys, tell your friends and neighbors about this. Take the flyers on your table and post them around town and help us out a lot. Dr. Bowe, thank you for giving us a glimpse of the future and leading a campaign that will put us in the right places in population health management and diagnostics. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for the questions. Great.